Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to rise to speak on Bill C-31, Canadian-Ukraine Free Trade Implementation Act. Mr. Speaker, our Conservative Party supports Bill C-31, as I see most parties in this House do. In short, I'm going to call it CUFTA from now on. CUFTA was successfully negotiated and concluded on July 14, 2015, by our previous Conservative government. As the Right Honourable Stephen Harper stated, the Ukrainian people want a Western future, a future of prosperity. And I just look back to this summer, Mr. Speaker, when we had a number of Ukrainian interns on the Hill, working for many members of Parliament from all different sides of the House. You could see it in their eyes and in their souls. They were looking for a future for their country. They were here to learn about democracy from us, and they came to our offices, and we shared stories, and we developed a trust and respect between members of Parliament and these interns. My intern, Maria, what an inspiration, and what a model of a young Ukrainian youth looking to the future. I was so proud of them. I met with the whole group, 30-some of them, one night. I bought them pizza. And we sat and had pizza pop and maybe the odd beer. And we had great discussions.
Shame.
We developed relationships. It made me so proud of my heritage, Mr. Speaker. I'm from Ukraine in background. Both my grandparents are Ukrainian on both sides. And I'm wearing a Ukrainian tie today, as I see some of my colleagues across the floor are wearing Ukrainian dress, and I appreciate that and thank them for that. CUFTA is consistent with the previous Conservative government's Economic Action Plan, 2015, which committed to jobs, growth, and long-term prosperity, Mr. Speaker. And this bill supports the Conservative Party's pro-trade plan, which aims to diversify trade and enable companies to benefit from new opportunities. Once enforced, this agreement would eliminate 99.9% of the tariffs on current imports from the Ukraine into Canada, and 86% of Ukrainians' tariffs on Canadian products, including such things as industrial goods, Mr. Speaker, wood products, fish and seafood products. This would benefit both Canadian and Ukrainian exporters and consumers. My part of the country, Western Canada, exports to Ukraine on the average about $80 million annually. And that was going between 2011 and 2013. Some of the top exports from Western Canada was frozen hake, bituminous coal, reservoir tanks and similar containers, parts of boring or sinking machines for drilling, air compressors and other similar equipment, cedars and planters, and most importantly, Mr. Speaker, I think, is frozen pork. And why do I think frozen pork is so important? Well, it's a staple food that Ukrainians like. And I grew up with pork, probably more so than beef. And on any given day, you offer me a steak or a barbecued pork chop, and I'll leave the steak. I'll take the pork. I see my heritage must be still with me. Upon entry into this forced agreement, Ukraine will immediately eliminate tariffs of 75% of the tariff lines for industrial products, with a further 24.8% to become duty-free over 7 years. That'll be 100% duty-free in 7 years. According to the Canadian government officials, the total back and forth trade between Canada and Ukraine averaged about $350 million between 2011 and 2013, and slowed drastically during 2014. Last year, Ukraine dealt with a political upheaval and armed conflict in southern and eastern parts of the country. The provisions, Mr. Speaker, of the agreement on free trade between Ukraine and Canada provide, in particular, the deepening of trade and economic cooperation, including trade in industrial and agricultural goods, intellectual property protection, and regulations on public procurement. The free trade agreement does not impact, and again I say does not impact, Canada's ability to maintain its existing supply management policy as Canadians overquota tariffs for supply of management goods, dairy, poultry, and eggs are excluded from the tariff concessions, Mr. Speaker. Total bilateral bilateral merchandise trade between Canada and Ukraine averaged $289 million between 2011 and 2015. And in the last year of 2015, it expanded by almost 20% as a result of the implementation of this trade. Canada's GDP, Mr. Speaker, will increase by $29.2 million under CUFTA, and the Ukraine's GDP would expand by $18.6 million. Canada's exports to Ukraine would increase by $41.2 million, Mr. Speaker. Canada export gains would be broad-based, with exports, again, of pork, machinery equipment, transport equipment, other manufactured products, motor vehicles, parts, as well as chemical products leading the way. The Ukrainian market offers many opportunities for Canadians, Canadian businesses and investors in areas such as aerospace, agricultural equipment, information and communication technology, agriculture and agri-food, fish and seafood, and mining equipment. The agriculture and agri-food sector employ over 530,000 people in 2014 in Canada and accounted for close to 3% of Canada's GDP. And Canada is the world's 5th largest exporter of agriculture and agri-food products. And our agriculture exports to Ukraine averaged almost $30 million between 2011 and 2013 each year. Mr. Speaker, the majority of Ukrainians who came to Canada in the late 1800s and early 1900s settled in Western Canada and became farmers. They farmed the areas, they opened up the land, they homesteaded. But there wasn't only the Ukrainians. There were Germans, Italians, Dutch, and many others that helped open up Canada and make it such a prosperous agricultural nation. Today, there are approximately 1.3 million Ukrainian descendants, the 2nd largest population of Ukrainians in the world, other than Ukraine itself. Many people said in this House that we need to be friends, but I think we're almost closer than friends in a lot of cases. I think we're family. When you talk about 1.3 million Canadians with ties to the Ukraine, it's families. In 2015 alone, bilateral trade between Canada and Ukraine increased 14%, and is showing that we are growing every year since this agreement was first looked at. Canadian products exported included pharmaceuticals, fish, seafoods, and coking coal. It's important to know that we export coal, we import coal. It's very important that Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement will generate opportunities for Canadians and Ukrainians. It will create new job opportunities. Ukrainian immigrants who came to Canada came here to prosper and open up this great land of ours. Now more than ever, it's time for Canadians to help the Ukraine prosper and to grow. I remember many times my grandfather talked about what it was like in the Ukraine, why he left. There was no chance to succeed. But he heard that there was opportunities in Canada and he came here. You know, I'm proud to say that from the descendants of my great-grandparents, that there's close to 1,000 of us from 2 people. And that speaks a lot in just a little over a century. We had great opportunities. The Ukraine struggled over the last few years, but they're on the right road to democracy. They're looking for our help. They're looking for our help in trade, and we must help them. Young Ukrainian entrepreneurs working with young Canadian entrepreneurs can grow each other's economies. And in conclusion, our Conservative Party supports Bill C-31, as I stated earlier, the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement Implementation Act that was successfully negotiated by the previous government and is supported by the current government and most parties of this House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And you know, it's great to see what we're witnessing today, in good part, where we have a Ukraine-Canada trade agreement It appears to have the support of all political parties inside the House. We have yet to hear from the Bloc side, and I'm anticipating that they too hopefully will be supporting what is a great agreement. My question to the member is just related to the importance of trade to our country. Economically, Canada's middle class benefits immensely when we have world trade. We are a trading nation. So yes, Canada will benefit with this trade agreement economically, but to ask and maybe suggest to the member if he could maybe provide some of other additional comments with respect to the benefits of enhancing Canada's special relationship that goes beyond the economics between two great nations, Canada and Ukraine.
Member for Yellowhead.
Well, I thank the honourable member for that question, and I think this goes so much further, Mr. Speaker, beyond the trade agreement we signed here. I spoke earlier about our House, having Ukrainian interns come and work with our members of Parliament from all parties. They came here to learn about democracy, the best way that they can become future leaders for their countries. I know in speaking with many of them, they not only came to Canada, but some of them had been to the United States, some had gone to England, some had gone to France. But there's a general consensus that they want to learn, and we must give them that opportunity. And the Canadian Parliamentary Intern Program with the Ukrainian is one thing that I think our government should support, and I would like to see it supported financially because it needs help. Thank you.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Kootenay, Columbia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my friend and colleague for his great speech. On my grandfather and grandmother on my father's side, the Heshka and Stetsky clan all settled around Yorkton, Saskatchewan, and we still go back every 5 years for a family reunion, and there's nothing better than a feast of Petaha, Halapshi, and Kubasa. That doesn't get any better than that. So the NDP will be supporting this bill. This is a very important increase in a positive relationship between the Ukraine and Canada, and it's a much better bill than CETA in many aspects. So I'd like to just ask my friend, do you think, because of the importance of this relationship between Canada and the Ukraine, that the Liberal government could be doing even more?
For Yellowhead.
I'd like to thank the honourable member for that question, Mr. Speaker. Yes, I think government, we can always do more. Exactly where we need to focus on is we need to assist the Ukraine in the times of needs. They're being threatened by a Putin regime, and I believe our military support must remain. And maybe we need to increase some of the support, the training, et cetera, that we give the military. So I believe government can always do better, and we must look at ways of doing better. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? Question commentaire? Resuming debate. Oh, the honourable member for Foothills on questions and comments.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank my colleague from Yellowhead, who's been a wonderful addition to the House over the last couple of years, and a great speech. It's always wonderful to hear those personal experiences, and some of the decisions that we make here in the House do have an impact, not only in our communities, but our family history as well. And I really appreciated my colleague talking about the parliamentary internship program and what an impact that had. And I was just wondering if I would ask him, when we had the president of Ukraine here a few years ago talking about that Canada-Ukraine relationship and how important it was, and they were looking for that support, I would just like to ask my colleague, was that shared amongst the younger people who he had the opportunity to work with, and if he could talk about the impact that the Canada-Ukraine relationship and this trade agreement will have on the next generation of Ukrainian people moving forward?
The honourable member for Yellowhead.
I'd like to thank the honourable member for that question. Yes, we had our discussions. Actually, the night that we sat and had some pizza and the odd beer, we did discuss that, and they were afraid that the funding from their own country was drying up, and they were hoping that Canada would support the program and continue the program because they found it so beneficial to the development of their future. And in speaking to my colleagues from all sides of the House that belong to the Ukrainian Parliamentary Friendship Group, we feel it's very important that the government support the group with funding. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.